I'd like to say good afternoon and welcome everyone to this week's edition of Imperial as One's Belonging series, where we explore the lived experiences of individuals from the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. I do say this every week, and we are in for a treat this afternoon. We really are. I know that we're in for a treat because we've got someone who's dedicated her life so far to doing some great stuff for students and empowering them. And that is Shakira Martin. And Shakira is, I've got it down as a British student politician and a former president of the National Union for Students. And it's a real privilege to have you with us this afternoon, Shakira. So, Shakira, I always start off by asking a question related to how you got your sense of identity, sense of belonging when you were growing up. So if you want to just elaborate and just say, tell us a little bit about that, that would be brilliant. And
Yeah,
thank you so much.
no, thank you, Wayne. Thank you, everybody, for having me here today. I'm delighted to be here and to be able to share my journey with you. And I'm hoping that you can get something from it and feel inspired. So, growing up in a single working class family, Caribbean heritage, I've come from a strong line of women in my family. So, my mum is one of 12.
Wow.
My grandma had 10 girls and 2 boys.
Wow.
Yeah. So actually, even like now, even being older, I've always come from a family that is outspoken, strong, confident, bold women. And I think I got a lot of my initial first identity about that boldness and that confidence to be my authentic self from my grandmother.
Right. Okay.
And it's just gone down through the generations, and that's something
Yeah.
I hold dear to me. I thought that I was the first person in the family to be hyped. And when I look back at pictures and videos and stuff, I realize, okay, that's where it come from. Kingston, Marvelly, Jamaica. All right.
Fantastic. Right. So you're a Kingstonian.
Kingstonian, exactly. Exactly.
Right. So a long, as you said, a long line of strong women
Yeah.
who have helped to influence your journey. So
Yeah.
tell me what it was like in the home. What was it like for you growing up? How many siblings did you have? What was
So yeah. So I'm the first, my mum and dad's first child of my mum's got 6 children. So I grew up in a single parent household.
Mhm.
To be honest, growing up was a bit unstable for me. I was exactly what our students are. When we talk about, first in the family to go to university,
Mhm.
deprivation, broken
Mhm.
homes kind of thing, that
Mhm.
was that was the kind of, first start that I had. And I'm
Mhm.
not upset about it actually, because it's made me who the person I am today.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I realized is that, so my mum is one of 12,
Mhm.
and she was the second one to be born in England. All my other aunties
Right.
were born in Jamaica.
Right.
So, and my dad was also born in England as well. So growing up, I kind of felt while I was in secondary school that I wasn't Jamaican enough because I had two British parents, and like
Right.
one of my
Okay.
cousins always had one parent that was almost Jamaican kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, it's not until Brexit happened, and I was like, okay, yeah, it's made me kind of see my identity a bit different in terms of actually, I'm the second generation of
Yeah.
British
Yeah.
being here. Um, so I used to really be really wanting to be more Jamaican. I used to like, have pink hair and dress in a certain way to kind of embrace my culture. And now I know that I don't need to look or sound a certain way to say that I've got Jamaican heritage. It's in my blood, it's in me. I don't need
Yeah.
to prove it to anybody. So now I've been able to kind of like embrace my different identities that
Yeah.
make me my unique, authentic self.
Okay. So you mentioned there about as you were growing up, that kind of like a conflict
Mhm.
between your parents. Your parents are from Jamaica, you were raised here, but because your parents were also here,
Mhm.
born here, you
Mhm.
felt that it was almost like a second disconnection. You don't
Yeah,
have the right.
I almost felt too British. I just
Yeah.
felt yeah, too British. It just felt like, I don't know. I think it was more of an inside feeling than how people were treating me. But I
Mhm.
just felt like I don't know. There's some things, there's some things that my auntie, who was born in Jamaica, would experiences they would have because they were born there that my mum didn't have because she
Yeah.
was born here.
Yeah.
So it almost felt sometimes that there was like a gap.
Yeah.
But even more so when my grandma died, I was
Mhm.
able to like recognize the different experiences that her children had
Yeah.
growing up in Jamaica and growing up in England.
Right. That's really that's so in terms of your schooling,
Mhm.
right? You said that you didn't really feel as though you were treated differently. How was your schooling experience? What was it like for
Yeah,
you?
so I think it's important to say. So I grew up in a household where drug abuse played a major part of my upbringing. So I did have that kind of unsettling kind of
Mhm.
life. And school was hard, um, but that's because I was in a household with a family that didn't know how to navigate in these complex kind of
Mhm.
systems. So, if there was trouble that was happening at school or someone was picking on me,
Mhm.
my mum's first reaction wasn't, let me write a letter to the board of governors. She was like, Shakira, let me come down to the school and see the parent kind of, kind of thing. So there were challenges, and I didn't realize, I knew that I was Black and I have experienced racism when I was little, but it was from other children, maybe in the park, and they
Mhm.
call you a chocolate biscuit or just something,
Mhm.
something like that. I
Mhm.
didn't understand or recognize until my NUS times that actually being a Black woman, I'm already disadvantaged before I even open up my mouth.
Wow.
Whether
Yeah.
I chat
Yeah.
sense or whether I chat inspiration, there's already a perception of me.
Right.
And I think that bit is the structural and systematic racism and prejudice that I find that much more harder to swallow
Mhm.
than the kind of overt racism, because I'm just
Right.
used to that, calling it the N word and all of that. But the barriers and challenges that come with being a Black woman in this society, I didn't realize how difficult it would be just because of the skin that I'm in
Mhm.
to be able to achieve or to be able to have certain opportunities that other people had.
Right.
But
I'm gonna go on.
sorry, but I've always been so, and this is why I'm so thankful for NUS, because I've always been a outspoken person. Coming
Mhm.
from a Caribbean background, that's not always goes down too well. But I've been able to harness that and kind of be able to use my voice in a positive in a positive way.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it has been a journey, and I've been able now to use the things that could be seen as negative in a
Mhm.
positive way. Yes, I'm loud. Yes, I'm
Mhm.
outspoken, but now
Mhm.
I know how to articulate and how to um, adapt in different environments to different audiences to kind of make me more of a holistic
Individual.
person.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's fantastic. I'm going to explore a few things with you, right? Just in terms of like you mentioned about growing up, the early childhood, the experiences of the family dynamics, as it were.
Mhm.
But and at school, so what aspirations did you have at school? Did you have any aspirations? What was your trajectory? What did you want to do?
So I didn't have no aspirations as that. So at first I wanted to be like a legal secretary because my auntie, we call her the rich auntie because she had a nice house and stuff. And I realized actually she ain't rich because she's paying 40% tax. You just got assets kind of thing. So I wanted to be like Auntie Claudette. And then I realized actually you can have a good career and and be successful, but it doesn't make you a nice person. There's a
Yeah,
balance, there's a
yeah, yeah,
balance.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but I think I didn't have no aspirations. My mum was on benefits. I didn't know more than what I had come from. I
yeah.
think the one thing that I wanted was my mum had, I've got my brothers and sisters are from different dads. One
Mhm.
thing that I wanted is to, when I grow up and I have my children, I want it to be with the same dad. So we all have the same
Yeah,
surname.
yeah.
That hasn't quite worked out either. And I'm
Right.
embracing it. I'm like, actually, it's about being happy in your life. You can have an
Yeah,
idea about your aspirations, but sometimes life takes you down different trajectories and it's for a reason.
yeah,
But in terms of career wise, it wasn't until I reached NUS that I realized that, oh my gosh, I can become a FE principal, a college
yeah,
principal. These
yeah.
are in my reach. Prior
Yeah.
to that, I didn't know nothing but the struggle. I even remember the sound of the income support book being stamped twice, double stamp and a rip.
Yeah.
That was my childhood.
Yeah.
So because of obviously deprivation and poverty and your parents, that cycle that your parents are brought up in, my mum wasn't necessarily able to empower me to say, actually, Shakira, the world is your oyster. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and although I grew up in an environment that wasn't necessarily the most settling,
Mm-hmm.
looking back in hindsight now, I'm like, actually, thank God that I've had those experiences because it saved me from making those same mistakes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now I can empower my children to be able to know that they can reach their full potential.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you I know that the NUS, their experiences in the NUS was very important, but how did you get to that stage? Because that's what I'm trying to navigate
Yeah.
to in
Yeah.
terms of um you said that there wasn't much in terms of aspiration. You had your Aunt Claudette
Yeah.
who you kind of like aspired towards.
Yeah.
Yeah. But educationally wise, because NUS is about students.
Yeah.
So what got you into that actual trajectory or that pathway
Yeah.
of studying?
Yeah. So actually, it was hitting rock bottom. So at the
Mhm,
time, I was in an unhealthy relationship. I
mhm,
didn't know that it was an unhealthy relationship because I thought domestic violence or whatever is like Ike and Tina Turner, and mine
mhm,
wasn't like that. So I didn't
mhm,
know. So because of that, I went into a women's refuge. And at that point, when I went into the women's refuge, it was really difficult for me to accept that I was a victim because I'm so used to being, pupil premium, had
mhm,
social services involved. I was just fed up of these different labels and I didn't want
mhm,
to be a victim of DV.
mhm,
It wasn't until when we was in the refuge, we had to do these different like programs to kind of build your confidence and your
mhm,
awareness and stuff. And not until I saw this quote that said at the time, there was around 750,000 children that were affected by domestic abuse. And
mhm.
I realized that with me not accepting my situation, I was actually making my children a statistic rather
Yeah, then taking them
than
out of the
doing it.
situation. Yeah.
So once I was there and I was able to be open and kind of accept my experiences and be able to gain my confidence back, I wanted to then go back into my community and help other young girls that were facing similar situations and didn't know what it was called. We don't
Yeah.
know, we're going through this, but it hasn't got a name. What is it?
Mhm,
And
mhm,
that's when I was at Lewisham College at the time, and that's when I saw a poster for my Students' Union women's officer.
mhm.
That's how I got involved. I never knew nothing about NUS, never voted in my life, wasn't political, never watched the news. But that's when I started to get that fire in my belly to be
Mhm.
like, actually, I want to have a voice and I want to speak on behalf of the voiceless. And it was through my students' union where I was able to kind of learn those skills and use NUS to kind of create this to help me become who I am today.
Yeah. So let's just unpack that a little bit more in terms of you saw this notice for the women's officer
Mhm,
in your college,
mhm.
right? And you applied. Did you think you would get the position?
I didn't know. If even if you saw my poster, it was so sexualized. The woman had a little sexy outfit on and she was like posed like this. Now in hindsight, I'm like, oh my goodness. I just went on Clipart and got a nice picture that I liked. I didn't really understand I didn't know what feminism is.
Mhm.
Often in my speeches when I was like younger in my NUS days, I was like, the only femi I know is femidom. I don't even know what feminism is. This is a new word kind of for me. So no, it was just that I had something to give. I had this fire in my belly. I had the pain of my experiences, and I wanted to ensure that no other woman would go through that.
Mhm.
And that's what it was. It wasn't to get a career out of, it wasn't anything other than I want to share my experience and empower, inspire, and motivate the next generation to to take ownership of their self.
Yeah, fantastic. So give us some illustrations of that journey
Yeah,
from being the women's officer,
yeah,
right? How do you go from being the women's officer at a local college to then standing up and being literally a national, not just, there's one thing being the student union president in your little college, but
mm-hmm.
to go from there to becoming the president of the National Students' Union.
Mhm.
That's a journey that we need to understand.
Mhm.
Give us some insight.
Yeah, so it was a whirlwind. Even now, I haven't even had time over the last 6 years to even reflect and be like, "Raw, I've come so far," because it's just almost been like, "Boom, boom, boom, boom." But
Yeah.
it was so when I took the role, when I won the role as the women's officer at Lewisham College, I started to put on events and wanted to do events and speak to more students and empower students. And at the time, the SU president was like, didn't turn up for meetings. They weren't around. They weren't doing nothing for students. And it was holding back the students' union. So
Mm-hmm.
the ones that were there, we done a vote in no confidence. And then we had a re-election and I stood for president.
Mm-hmm.
So I was only women's officer for only half a year, actually. And I was president of my students' union for a year and a half. And then once our student engagement officer was like, there's a bigger movement, there's this national union of students, they do conferences, you get to go to different parts of the country and vote and develop policy. I didn't even know what this meant. And I was like, this sounds all good. I remember Richard, his name was. I was like, this sounds all good, Richard, but I've got kids and I ain't got no childcare. And it was like, NUS pays for your childcare, you can bring a nanny. I was like, what? So my first event that I went to, my daughter was 3 months old. I was still breastfeeding at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my first NUS event in Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a event for FE students. And I'm just going be my authentic self. I'm not going to gain likes or views or whatever. I'm just going to be myself. And the theme of that conference was around employability and work. And we've got all these like university students and people talking about, oh, yes, we need to get into doctor, being, healthcare and all of this kind of different traditional kind of conversation about work and careers.
Mm-hmm.
And I put up my hand and I said, this sounds all good, but what are we going to do for those that rehabilitating out of prisons? Like, shouldn't they have an opportunity to access work and to be rehabilitated through work? And after I said that comment, to me, it was just standard to say. After I said it during the break time, everyone was coming up to me like, oh my gosh, Shakira, you made a good point. Oh, nobody don't ever talk like this. And I'm like, it doesn't even make sense. I didn't even try to do this. It was almost an accident. I was just,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when people started to like say to me that they could relate to me or there needed to be fresh voices. So I ran for an election for as one of the zone committees. Never wrote a speech in my life. Never gave a speech in my life. I was upstairs breastfeeding in a hotel while writing a speech. I ran for 2 committees and I got elected to both. That was the first time that anybody actually got elected to both committees. So then I realized I started to kind of get the SU vibe and I just wanted to continue. And I realized that FE was underrepresented, that they viewed us differently because they, returning learners and second chance and stuff like that. So I really wanted to boost the profile of FE colleges because it changes and saves lives. And I was a prime example of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I decided to run for vice president for further education. I was the underdog at the time. And I wrote my speech and I kept it real. I spoke about, drugs and prison and all the things that people are scared to kind of talk about. Mm-hmm. And I got elected as the vice president, but I didn't know how big the role was. I didn't know it was national. I didn't know. I was just being myself and using my experience to kind of tell my story and to kind of inspire other people. But during that time while I was at NUS, I could see that there were so many students that wasn't represented by the narrative that NUS was putting forward at the time. And it was just like, I know NUS was also a part of saving and changing my lives. And because of that leadership at that time, I felt that there was a whole bunch of Shakiras that was missing out. Mm-hmm. So I decided to run for the big role. Mm-hmm. But what I realized is, you can't wait for people to give you permission. So when I ran for VPFE, everybody, including the Black people and the working class people and all my friends, yeah, Shakira, you'll be great. We're just what we need. You're a breath of fresh air. When I went for the big role, I lost so many friends. It's like, all right, who do you think you are applying for this role? You need to be like this and you need to be like that. And I actually lost a lot of friends because some people thought I wasn't ready for the role. Some people didn't agree of who I was standing up against, that we were on the same side. And I got the role, the first Black woman, following on from Trevor Phillips in 1979,
Mm-hmm.
and the second to have not gone to university at the time.
Mm-hmm.
When I went into that role, my kind of approach was, I am the NUS president. The NUS president isn't me. So I was shaping how that looks like. So
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't changing how I talk or how I dressed or whatever. I would come in my authentic self because I wanted to be relatable to students.
Mm-hmm.
When I go to the Houses of Parliament, I go and I'm showing my tattoos, and I might have pink in my hair or blue, or my nails are on point or whatever. But I really wanted to show people that you don't have to look or sound a certain way to be able to make change and be influential. And that was really important. And during my time as NUS president, when I went around the country, and people would come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, you inspire me. I want to be just like you. That made all the adversities that I'd gone through worth it. It gave me a humbling to be like, actually, sometimes we have to go through some turbulent times to be able to tell our story and to be able to help other people. But during my time as NUS president, I came up with a lot of challenges. Politics was a mess. It was Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn mix up, and the momentum. So there was a lot, Brexit happening, the independence with Scotland. There was a lot going on politically. And I had to make some decisions as the head of the organization, because we had some financial problems, to be able to keep that legacy alive. Because imagine the first Black woman to lead an organization that was nearly at its 100th year. I was the one to, but it was based on me whether this organization survived or not. And I could just see the Daily Mail now writing the headlines if it had gone bankrupt, under a woman or a Black woman leadership. So I had to do everything in my power to change that. And that meant that I had to be pragmatic and make decisions that would ultimately affect the people that I care about and some of my friends and some of my allies, in order for us to be sustainable. And because of that, and people think leadership is easy. It looks good on the outside, but somebody needs to make them tough decisions, and somebody needs to do it with their chest. And it is conflicting, especially being a grassroots person and getting into that leadership managerial role. But during that time, I had, especially in my second year, the worst experience. They accused me of bullying. They accused me of being aggressive. They accused me of not being fair, being rude. Angry Black woman, just painted that narrative. And I was really surprised, actually, because it wasn't necessarily the white people that was creating this narrative. It was people of my own, in my own communities, that was doing that. And it really made me view people differently, to say, actually, yes, as BAME people, which I don't really like that acronym, because I feel like it joins everyone together, when actually we go through different experiences and they need to be seen as separate for what it is. And then it's brought together to build that voice and to work in collaboration and allyship. But it really made me realize that actually, as a group of people, we might have similarities, but we're not harmonious. And just because you're Black, it doesn't mean you're going to have my back, or I'm going to have your back. So I really learned a lot about valuing myself and not allowing other people to give me the permission to move forward and go far. And actually, on paper, the government, this Tory government, probably would love me on paper, because I totally show social mobility. But nobody never taught me about, once you get out of the struggle, what next? So now I'm a Black woman in senior leadership, and there's another set of struggles. People don't want to be told what to do by you. People look at you and think you don't deserve your role. You're at the top of the organization, so you're going to get grievances and stuff like that. But I didn't realize, I thought once you get out of the struggle, you're out. I've come off of benefits. I'm working. I've got a good salary. I'm okay. I've made it. And actually, it's not. It's a continuous cycle. You're going to have to learn how to navigate in those systems.
Mhm.
And I am really lucky, and it's through NUS and the work that I've done that I've got so many different friends and networks and coaches and mentors that have invested in me to become the person that I am today. And I'm still learning.
Mhm.
I'm still
Oh,
learning.
I don't mean to cut you. Your story is fascinating, really is. One of the things which I was gonna just mention.
You're muted. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
All right, sorry. One of the things which you said just towards the end of your description there was the fact that um, I was going to ask you about your support mechanisms.
Yeah.
What, from someone who hadn't kind of like grown up understanding being into them, as it were,
Yeah.
right? So my question really is, as you're going through this system, where are you getting your knowledge? Who's supporting you? Who's helping you to be able to keep your head above water, as it were? And also, did you ever at any point in time think, what am I doing here? What what
Every day.
what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. So I think in a professional capacities, and definitely in politics, we don't often get to talk about our religion and our faith. And
Mm-hmm.
I think first and foremost, I think for me, my comfort comes from God. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my comfort are, the person that sees me in my weakest, at my most vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
my week's off and I ain't got no makeup on and I'm crying. I often lean on my faith and pray to God for
Mm-hmm.
for direction and stuff, and that's from my kind of faith and spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I've learned is that you need to have a variety of different people at different levels across different communities to help you. So I've got a white mentor, a white straight man mentor, because I want to learn how to function in this white straight dominated world. I want to learn how to do that. But
Mm-hmm.
I've also got a black woman mentor that can teach me how to navigate through these complex challenges and barriers, and be able to give me the tools and techniques to be able to keep myself well and
Yeah.
whole and
Yeah.
stuff. So that's where I draw on my source from. And then when it gets really, really bad, and I'm like, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
I remember the students. I remember Shakira 15 years ago that was on the block smoking weed, causing antisocial behavior. And it was because of somebody that took the time to invest in me, why I to allow me to be where I am. So when things hit the fan and it gets really hard and I'm like, why am I here? Why am I doing it? I think to myself, if I don't do it, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
There are thousands more Shakiras that are nationally around the world. And I have a duty to be able to bring up the next generation of young people to do that. And if that means I die trying, then I'd rather die trying and making a way than giving up. There's no option. There's no option. I don't want my children to be having these same conversations
Mm-hmm.
in 10, 15 years time. So there's no option.
So,
You got to
so
do it.
So tell me, where's your trajectory now? Because one of the things which you did mention was, okay, you were president of the National Union of Students. That time is behind you now, all right? And you said nobody prepares you for what comes next. So what's next for you, and how are you pursuing that?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a few things that I wanted to share first,
Yeah,
actually.
that's fine.
So, when you're growing up on benefits and stuff like that, all you want to do is make money.
Mm-hmm.
And you think growing up on benefits that, you know, um, 35,000 is a lot of money or whatever. So it's really made me be able to understand, firstly, that money isn't everything. Happiness comes first, because if you're not happy,
Mm-hmm.
you ain't going to be able to spend no money or do it or function. So I
Yeah.
think that was the first thing. And also that so this is a joke, a story that I often share. So when I was growing up, when I was little, I used to have two white friends. I had more than that, but these two in particular, Alison and Rebecca. And at primary school, they used to go to brownies or guides or one of them. And I remember they used to come in and I do my best to serve the Lord and whatever. And they used to go on these exhibitions and stuff. And I was like, oh, I would really want to do that. But I would never go to my mum and put her in a position to make her feel bad because I know that she wasn't able to afford it. When I finished NUS and I got into my first job, I was able to send my children to Brown, what was it? Is it Brown? Beavers.
Beavers.
I was so happy. I was like, yeah, I feel middle class. This is how it goes. Yeah, the kids are going Beavers. They're getting their badges. I can't sew to save my life. I try to use glue but this is the capital that comes with it. You know what I mean? You can move, but if you don't have that capital, that social capital behind you, you're not going to know how to function.
Yeah.
So there was one day that the children had this exhibition in a camping overnight stay. So I've gone to Argos and I've bought 2 sleeping bags. They were like $15.99 each. One for Kaisha, one for Kiara, pink and purple one. They've gone off on their exhibition. When they've come back now, the leader came up to me and was like, Mum, the girls were a bit cold last night. And I'm like, why are they cold? I got them a sleeping bag. Like I told them to wear socks, and then I realized that there's different sleeping bag depths. Because you don't know. I bought the sleeping bag to go and sleep over at your friend's house. I didn't know that there's different qualities and quantities of fur. And so that is a prime example of you move out of your social circle into a different one. But if you don't know how to navigate, you're still going to stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
You will know the difference between these mums know how to run an exhibition. They're the kids that's coming in with the roller mat and the big rucksack. And then you got my daughter with the suitcase one. You know, I'm like, listen, we ain't got no pillows. Stuff your coat in the pillowcase and lay on that. But you still, do you know what I mean? So you move out, but we still will stick out because you need to know how to navigate
the new system
through those systems. So now moving forward, my aspiration, and it has been for a number of years, is to be a principal of a FE college.
Yeah.
Ideally Lewisham College, because for me, it will just be full circle to just go back to where I started from. And I'm currently head of student experience at Croydon College. Not too far from senior management. My pass can get me to the boardroom. I just press it. But even in that, my strategy is sometimes you can't show people how much authority or power that you have because you'll have people that's hating on you. So when there's other people in the boardroom, I've got my access, but I ain't gonna let you know that. I'm gonna press the buzzer and make you open the door for me. So that it makes you, because sometimes you play your hand. Sometimes we're so grateful for the opportunity that we're going around, oh, thank you, oh, thank you, oh, thank you. And it's like, actually, there's a period of time that you need to stop thanking people and know your worth. And I think that's where I'm at now. I know what I can give. I know what I can do. I know the impact that I can make. So I need to stop being over thankful for the opportunity because I deserve to be here. I deserve to be here. And I've also realized that as a Black woman, it's unfortunate, but as a Black woman, no matter how far you go, you're still going to have those people that treat you like rubbish. That's still going to think that you don't deserve to be there, that you're not smart enough to be there, that you don't have the look to be there. And that's why the one piece of advice that I would say to people is don't try to be anybody else but yourself. Be your authentic self. And I think that's something that NUS had given me the capacity to do, is be my authentic self. So that now that I'm going into different employment, people know what they're getting. They know that I'm a positive disruptor. They know that I'm, going to say it as it is. But I've been able to do that because I didn't compromise myself during my journey. If I had faked it and tried to be something else, I don't think I would have been here right now because I would have slipped up. I would have slipped up. So be your authentic self. Your struggles is what makes you. Me overcoming adversity is what has given me the story to be able to share. So now I look back at my childhood, and yes, it was hard growing up, not having dinner money, not having bus fare money, my uniform not necessarily being cleaned and ironed and stuff. But now I'm in my college and I can see, when I see a student like that, it enables me to be able to say, okay, I know something's up. It allows me to identify where students are struggling. And it also allows me to empower the students, because I can say, I have been there, I was you. It is literally possible to get out of it because
Yeah.
I done it.
Yeah. Yes.
It's deep.
No, it's more than deep. I truly, from the first time I met you, which was in about 2018,
Yeah.
2019 at a conference,
Yeah.
and I said at the time that you were just yourself. I remember coming up and shaking your hand and saying that was really refreshing. It was in front of a whole host of academics and other senior leaders, and you just said, "This is how it is." And I'm glad that you've never lost that voice,
No.
because sometimes people get into positions and, as you said, they try to change to adapt to a situation which they know effectively know nothing about, and the qualities that got them into that position,
Yeah.
they're then trying to think, oh well, I'm better than that now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
And
you're
it's
not saying,
hard, Wayne. It's hard, because it is conflicting. I'm a grounds person. I'm on the
mm-hmm,
ground. I'm on the picket line.
mm-hmm,
That's where my heart is.
mm-hmm,
But I realize that we need people like us in the boardroom to be able to articulate that. So I'm versatile. I can go hard on the ground, and I can go hard in the boardroom as well.
mm-hmm,
But one thing that, even when there's hard decisions that I have to make, what I go back to is my approach as a mother,
mm-hmm,
that I'm going to do whatever I need to do to protect my children. And that might mean that it's a short-term loss for a long-term gain. But I
mm-hmm,
think if you're doing things integrally, and anybody can ask you a question, and you don't need to go to the WhatsApp groups for your answers, and you believe in what you're doing, as much
mm-hmm,
as it might be, what not what people want from you,
mm-hmm,
believe in it and you do it with your chest, you're
mm-hmm,
halfway there. What people don't want is a weak-hearted leader that can't make bold moves with their chest.
mm-hmm,
And that's the type of organization that I want to work for. I want to work for one that is bold, don't want to tinker around the edges, want to do things differently. Those kind of so at Croydon now, we've just had our recent Ofsted inspection. It didn't come out good.
mm-hmm.
And yes, everybody's a bit down, but I'm happy. I'm like, listen, never waste the opportunity of a crisis. Like, this is a time to change things. So I'm walking around, I'm pumped. Everyone feels a bit mopey, but I'm pumped. And I'm like, I would rather be in a college that is from down, once you're down, the only way is up,
Yeah.
than be at a college that's outstanding and nobody don't want to change. Nobody don't want to innovate.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and I think that is one of the things that I have kept with me over my time, is that I'm so used to fighting for things that I'm down for it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another part of me sometimes to be like, actually, Shakira, you don't need to fight for everything. You
Mm-hmm.
don't need to fight for everything. So choose your battles.
Yeah.
And choose your fight, because you don't want to get burnt out.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm going to see if there's any question. If anyone has questions from the audience, I always have questions. All right. But if there are, just raise your hand and I'll come to you. Other than that, there were so many things which you were just unpacking in terms of having that inner self-belief. And that's something we haven't really touched on, right? I know you said that you came from a line of strong Black women, right? But it's one thing coming from a line of strong Black women, but how have you then harnessed that, and how has that helped you in your motivation to where you want to get to? Granny, we'll come to you in a second.
I think one of the things is that when being vulnerable is important. I think sometimes, especially as Black women, we're seen as, or people will even say it, and it's not even in a horrible way, oh, you're so strong, you're so resilient. And then you feel like you have to keeping up with the Joneses, or keeping up with those appearances. I've learned that actually there's sometimes that you need to be vulnerable, because sometimes being vulnerable allows you to think differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because we're human and there's only so much that we can take. And if we
Mm-hmm.
don't allow ourselves to relax and offload and let out that pain or that stress, that it will make you ill. So I've realized that actually, yes, I am strong. But even when I'm crying my eyes out at home, I'm still strong. And I think that's something that, you know, that we need to embrace. Everyone talks about mental health and well-being, and you know, you've got to have a good positive mental health. And it's easy to say, but it's not easy to do. I would say, you know, having those vulnerable moments when you feel, you know, letting yourself just free is also helpful. And I think that's how you harness more strength, because you'll be able to kind of offload that bit and ready for the next the next challenge.
Brilliant. Thank you. Granny. Well, that's what the label is.
Yeah.
I like it.
You can call me Granny if you want. It's my phone. It's my phone's name. It's just taking it off, but it's red. Shakira, thank you so much. It's just been inspiring. Really, really amazing listening to your story this afternoon. What I really like and what struck me is that you're very honest about the early hardships. And I think sometimes we need to hear a little bit more of that so we can identify that journey in one another as well, particularly when you're talking about the income support stamp book, the
Rip.
Exactly. And I just think there's not many of us who, like, I'm now like come through Imperial, I'm a doctor, I'm going to work in like a pharmaceutical company now. There's not many of us who reach these successes that come from there. Yeah. And my question to you is about your authenticity, because you've really maintained a clear conviction in who you are. And you've brought that into, it seems, all aspects of your work. How do you do that time and time again? Because sometimes, particularly the further away you get from home, from your communities, it can be a bit hard to do, I find. But I know it's important. So
see, the thing is that I'm still living in the struggle. Don't get gas because I've got a fancy job and my children ain't pupil premium, that my life is all hurdy-gurdy. When I go back home, and I think this is what keeps me grounded, when I go back home, I still have got people addicted to drugs around me. I've got a good salary, and my daughter's dinner money bill is nearly £400 because I can't afford to pay it because I'm just working and as pay as you go. So I think, as much as it's actually a good question, Granny, because it's actually made me reflect, and that's probably why I've been able to remain grounded, because actually I'm never that far from my community. When I turn off this computer and I jump in my car and I reach to my house, different. The kids it's hard. I'm a single parent. I'm on that cusp now where I've got a good salary, but as a single parent, I'm paying dinner money. I'm paying nearly £2,000 childcare. You know, I need to go through all those other things. I'm not far from what it is. So, and I think that's what has kept me grounded, that actually we're only one step away from going back to where we started. And yes, we can be successful and be in our families and have great jobs and great careers, but there's somebody in our family that isn't doing that. So sometimes we have to, when we're in these positions, what we often have to do is look back on the people that we've left to bring them forward and remind ourselves and keep ourselves grounded. So I could have gone into NUS and been like, I don't want none of these people to meet my family because they're going to embarrass me or they're going to whatever. Whereas I was like, come mum, come cousins, come to this, my manager's coming in, you lot. How are we going to make this look professional while we're on video?
That's fine. Just bring them in. That's cool. We don't mind.
I'm giving a keynote at a conference and they're recording. So now we're on the recording. Nearly finished. I'll be finished at past. Thank you. Sorry.
That's all right. I like the way you handled that, man. That was a sweet code switch. I tell you, that was.
But again, that's how it. I think how it needs to be. We might be successful and we might be the ones that are able to break the mold, but it doesn't mean that our whole family haven't come ain't still in the struggle.
That's right.
There's, you know, whether that's cousins, distant cousins, direct cousins, or whatever. And I think sometimes we need to remember that not everybody has the same experiences as us. The world doesn't make it easy for all of us to make it. There's going to be a few of us, and that's why it's our duty, once we get into those positions of influence, to remember where we come from, and let them know that we remember. That being said, it doesn't mean that you need to hook up all your family and friends with jobs, because sometimes people ain't ready. Sometimes people ain't ready, and they have to go through their own experiences. So you selling yourself out isn't necessarily not giving opportunities or not giving opportunities for other people, but it's being able to bring other people up and be honest and be like, actually, let me help mentor you and shape you and whatever. Me giving you a job or hooking you up with my link, that might not be the best thing yet. And being able, so yeah, it is hard, but I think we're not far from where we started. It takes one wrong move, one wrong decision.
Yeah.
And it all can come falling down.
I don't mean to cut in on you, but
thank you so much.
Thank you for that. I'm not going to
stay in contact, Granny, because I want you to come to my college and speak to some of the medical students. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Wayne, if you could
yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Wayne has my yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt. What I was going to say is as you were talking about that story and making sure that you remain grounded, that's such an important thing, to remain grounded and to recognize that I'm still on the journey. I'm not the complete package. And in doing that, it helps you to maintain that authenticity, that connection to where you've come from. As the Bob Marley made it in a song, but it was from Marcus Garvey, where he says a man who doesn't know his heritage is like a tree without roots. Yeah. And if we start to kind of like lob off parts of our heritage or parts of what made us who we are, we're denying who we are.
100.
Yeah. So I've got two final questions, just because I'm wary of time and everything.
Go ahead, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Two final questions. And these are, right, it's kind of like a double header, right? The first part of the question is, what advice would you give to your 16-year-old self, right? And the second part is, what would your 16-year-old self look at you now and say, wow, are you that Shakira?
What I would give to my 16-year-old self. So at the time when I was 16, and obviously I've grown up in with family members that had addiction problems and stuff, you think that you're the only one, and you're not. There's so many. Maybe some people ain't as obvious, or people don't talk about it, but sometimes you think you're isolated and you're in situations and you're by yourself. But I think what makes us all unique is our adversities and overcoming our adversities. If I didn't go through what I went through, I wouldn't be the Shakira that I am today. I would be a totally different one. And I've learned so my 16-year-old self, I would say, embrace every experience, positive and negative, because that's what's going to make you your authentic self. When I look at I'm not saying I've got scars on my back, but when I've looked at all the pain and the stuff that I've gone through, I realized that actually I needed to do that for it to change my mindset and change my thought process, to be able to allow me to learn how to navigate and do things differently. The 16-year-old Shakira, definitely, that's what it's going to say. Are you that? Like, the 16-year-old, like, looking back now, it would be like, girl, you have come so far. And regardless of what happens moving forward, remember how far that you have come, because you have changed and saved and inspired lives. You're not going to necessarily know all of them. That you're not necessarily going to see those people flourish and grow and be part of their journey, but actually you need to keep doing what you're doing and embrace the challenges. There's going to be people in your life for a season, there's going to be people in your life for a reason, and there's going to be people in your life for a lifetime. And the quote that I often say, which I like to end on, and I say this to my students, is I think this is from an American, I think he's an academic. His name's Les Brown. I don't really know much of him, but I realized that after I started to use his quote, I got a Harvard reference where I got it from. And it goes like this: if you put yourself in a position where you have to stretch outside your comfort zone, then you will be forced to expand your consciousness. I'm going to say it again, because I think sometimes when you say it again, it resonates different. If you put yourself in a position where you have to stretch outside your comfort zone, then you will be forced to expand your consciousness. So those that's online, if that means in your relationships, if that means in your career, if that means in your personal life, take that risk of coming out of your comfort zone, because not until you come out of it will you be able to think, how do I move forward? We're all capable of being able to achieve, and our pain is what makes us. The struggle is what's made me. You know, like I feel like I've got a PhD of life because of the things that I've gone through. And I look back now and I say, oh my gosh, thank you, Mum, for having those mistakes so that I didn't have to make it. Thank you to those NUS people that was on my case, and because you showed me about people. But I've had to, and it's hard, put myself into situations where I feel uncomfortable. But not until you do that will you allow your brain to think differently. So whatever that means to you, that would be my biggest advice. You are more than capable of achieving. You are more than capable of overcoming. And sometimes we have to go down to go up. But once you're down, the only way is up. But stretch outside that comfort zone, allow your mind to expand your consciousness and keep your authenticity, and the rest will flow. And it ain't going to be just a one direction. You're going to go 10 steps forward. You might go 2 steps back. You might go 2 steps forward, 10 steps back. That is fine. That is part of your journey. But when you take your ownership, I can talk about, you know, my upbringing confidently, because I'm like, yeah, it's made me who I am. Embrace it. And sometimes it's easier said than done, you lot. I'm not saying that it's easy. Everyone's gone through different things. But when you own your story, and your story is yours, and you can articulate it and shape the narrative, nobody can't take that away from you.
Absolutely. Shakira, girl, it was destined for us to be together today, you know.
100%.
Destined.
100%.
It was you are a true inspiration. I said it the first time I met you, and I'll continue to say that, because I love the way how you own your story. You've taken ownership, and that quote by Les Brown is absolutely brilliant. You know, we have to step outside of our comfort zone to actually understand our consciousness. I love it. You know, so I want to just wish you all the very best and say a big thank you. I know we're going to hook up again. Trust
100.
We're gonna definitely hook up again. Yeah. I want to get you over to Imperial College to give some talks.
Yeah, I'm down.
Because it's another level of understanding which you're bringing, which is brilliant.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to just let everybody know what's going to be happening next week.
Yeah.
And next week is the day after the Windrush celebration, or Windrush Day, I should say, 75 years. Imagine 75 years that we've been contributing. And our guest next week is going to be Dr. Dwayne Neal, OBE, and he's a co-founder of the Reach Society and Lyric Associates, involved in project management, executive coaching, and he too has a passion for the community, and his OBE is from that. But I'm going to let him share his story next week. So please do tune in, because his is another fascinating story as well. And if you have missed, oh, again, I forgot this one was here. Please sign up to this Meet the Author with Simon Hudson. He wrote a book, History Through the Black Experience, and we're going to be showcasing him at Imperial College on the 29th of June. So please come along, and we'll all meet up and have a conversation. Finally, if you have missed any of the other interviews, then just go to our YouTube channel, which is tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO, and you'll be able to see this and many others, many other interviews of individuals who have owned their story, who have shared their stories. And it's just really good to have their stories with us. So until next week, continue to find your place, continue to find your sense of belonging. And I want to just say a very happy weekend, and we'll see you again next week. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.